In the last segment, I talked about how to the internet, you're just a number, a file, a doll called an avatar, and how the for-profit business approach is what is driving up screen time. In that segment, tech executives confessed that from the onset, their goal was to keep us on the screen for as long as possible. And to achieve this, they created social validation feedback loops, which are dopamine feedback loops that manipulate the pleasure centers of our brains. I will talk about these loops in detail in a later segment. We also heard about tech company employees protecting their children from these addictive devices at home and at school, while working 24/7 to expand the exposure to our children with reckless abandon. In this new segment, I will talk about profiling and retention, and how a consumer of the internet cannot avoid being profiled. Do not for a moment think that it is by chance that every time you log on to the internet, items that you like pop up on the screen. This has intrigued many people. Well, there is an explanation. Welcome to the Digitalk series. In 2019, the number of active devices on the internet reached, hear this, 26.66 billion with a B. This is according to an online tech magazine, Security Today. The last time I checked, the world population was 7.8 billion. So on average, there are 3.5 devices, active devices on the internet per person. One might wonder how it is possible for these devices to communicate simultaneously on a network. Here is what you should know. Every device on the internet has a unique identifier. I could unpack the constitution of this unique identifier, but that would not serve any purpose here. What is important to note is that your laptop, your smartphone, your smartwatch, your desktop, and any other device you use to access the internet has a unique identifier. This is an important key for profiling. Think about this. If you routinely use an array of these devices to manage your online social media engagements and also to access your email, the tech companies using their powerful computers, which run sophisticated data mining software, will connect the dots and attach these devices to your avatar, file, or profile. Then the job of harvesting your personal information gets underway. Once your avatar has been populated with this information, the challenge of keeping you glued to the screen kicks into high gear, and the ensuing work to retain you expands to your contacts, your work colleagues, your relatives, your hobbies, and your favorite things to do. Now the brain, which is the main target, is a finite organ. For most functions, the brain is calibrated to start and stop. You start a race and at some point you finish it. The day begins in the morning and ends in the evening. This is how humans have functioned for years on end. In comes social media. The online platforms have employed techniques that force the brain into infinite loops and wait states that never end. This has created a condition psychologists refer to as the state of insufficiency. Social media feeds, including news feeds and online games, are infinite by design. The goal is to keep you glued to the screen for as long as possible. All these platforms employ this bottomless design, albeit in different formats, to meet this very goal. For some, it is the never-ending scroll. For others, it is the continuous swiping, looking for a possible date or a lifetime partner. Please watch this clip.
Most of you are probably familiar with the concept of infinite scroll. It's when you're using an app or website and as you scroll down, new content continuously loads. In other words, the available content never stops. It's infinite. The most famous example of infinite scroll in today's world is probably TikTok. You open the app and their algorithm continuously feeds you recommended videos as you keep scrolling down. The same goes for Facebook's infinite newsfeed, Instagram's infinite explore page, and to a certain extent, autoplay features on streaming services like YouTube, Netflix, and Hulu.
The vast majority of the over 5.6 billion daily Google searches never go past the first or the second page. The reason for this is that Google search is not infinite by design. So our brains attach some level of importance to the search hierarchy. And after the first or the second page, we stop looking or searching. Please listen to the answers provided in the next clip.
So why is infinite scroll so addictive? It comes down to the psychology of our brains. Our attention is best held by the unknown, and infinite scroll provides a small dose of that every time we scroll down onto the next piece of content in our feed. In the words of behavioral engineer and author Nir Eyal, our brains can't get enough of trying to predict what's next, and our dopamine system kicks into high gear when we're waiting to know if our team will make the field goal, how the dice will land, or how the movie plot ends. Like a loose slot machine, the infinite scroll gives users fast access to variable rewards. So in plain words, the gist of the issue is that infinite scroll is bad because you stay on social media for longer.
In the multiplayer gaming space and other platforms, tech companies exploit the desire, our desire to stay continually connected with what others are doing. FOMO, the fear of missing out. This has now become a business strategy with most online platforms. So there is a constant cross-communication with the reachable users on what they are missing out on. It may be a party, a photo session, a game, or some unique experience that their friends and relatives are having or are a part of. All these layered activities keep the brain occupied and engaged. Tech companies, on the other hand, are busy marketing and selling screen time for obscene profits. Watch this clip.
It's sort of hard to talk about this. Our minds have these kinds of backdoors. There's kind of, if you're human and you wake up and you open your eyes, there is a certain set of dimensions to your experience that can be manipulated. When I was a kid, I was a magician, and you learn all about these limits, that short-term memory is about this long, and there's different reaction times, and if you ask people certain questions in certain ways, you can control the answer. And this is just the structure of being human. To be human means that you are persuadable in every single moment. I mean, the thing about magic, as an example, is that magic works on everybody. Sleight of hand, right? It doesn't matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are. It's not about what someone knows, it's about how your mind actually works. So knowing this, it turns out that there's this whole playbook of persuasive techniques that actually I learned when I was at the Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, and that most people in Silicon Valley in the tech industry learned as ways of getting your attention. So one example is we are all vulnerable to social approval. We really care what other people think of us. So for example, when you upload a new photo, a new profile photo of yourself on Facebook, that's a moment where our mind is very vulnerable to knowing what other people think of my new profile photo. And so when we get new likes on our profile photo, Facebook, knowing this, could actually message me and say, oh, you have new likes on your profile photo. And it knows that we'll be vulnerable to that moment because we all really care about when we're tagged in a photo or when we have a new profile photo. And the thing is that they control the dial, the technology companies control the dial for when and how long your profile photo shows up on other people's news feeds. So they can orchestrate it so that other people more often end up liking your profile photo over a delayed period of time, for example, so that you end up having to more frequently come back and see what the new likes are, right? And the problem is that they don't do this because they're evil. They do it because, again, they're in this race for our attention. And we should also ask, is that necessarily such a bad thing if they're orchestrating it so that other people like my photo? I mean, that might feel good to me. But so we have to have a new conversation about, as these technology companies use these techniques, these vulnerabilities in our minds, when is that actually aligned and good for us? When is that ethical? When is that honest? When is that fair? And when is that dishonest and unfair? Because they're actually manipulating our minds in a way that doesn't add up to our spending our time well on the screen. Well, so another vulnerability in our mind is something called a variable schedule reward. And that's like a slot machine in Las Vegas. It turns out that slot machines make more money in the United States than baseball, movies, and theme parks combined. People become addicted to slot machines, I think it's 2 to 3 times faster than any other kind of gambling in a casino. So it's insane. And why is that? Because it's very simple. You just pull a lever and sometimes you get a reward, and sometimes you don't. And the more random it is, and the more variable it is, the more addictive it becomes. And the thing is that turns our phone into a slot machine, because every time we check our phone, we're playing the slot machine to see, what did I get, right? Every time that we check our email, we're playing the slot machine to see, what did I get? Did I get invited to an interview at Big Think, or did I just get another newsletter, right? Or if you're on a dating site like Tinder, and when you're swiping, each swipe is you're playing the slot machine to see, did I get a match? I'm playing the slot machine to see, did I get a match? And the problem is that this dynamic, these variable schedule rewards, or the slot machine mechanic, is so powerful that it's the best thing at addicting people and putting you in the zone. One of the original designers of the Facebook newsfeed told me that the thing that made the newsfeed work at the very, very, very beginning, back in 2006, was in part a hardware innovation. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? And she said it was actually the scroll wheel on a mouse. Because with the scroll wheel on a mouse, your hand never had to leave its resting position. You just scroll to see the next thing. And because before that, you had to click on the down button or move your mouse and drag the arrow down and scroll the page that way. When you can take your 2 fingers on a trackpad and do this, or you can just scroll on a scroll wheel, it just means your hand never has to leave its resting position, and it's more like a slot machine. You can just keep swiping and playing, just like in Vegas where there's the button right there. They actually changed it, in fact. It used to be a lever, and now it's just a button in Vegas because it found it's easier just to get people to see if they get a match this way. So how much on our phones, when we use our technology, Instagram is like a slot machine. What's going to come next on the feeds? Snapchat is a slot machine. Each time you see the red notifications and you don't know what's behind it, you're playing the slot machine when you click on it to see, what did I get, right? And so it's sprinkled all throughout these products because it's a very compelling way of getting people's attention.
As you can see, technology has turned us and our children into gamblers without our consent. Gambling, like other addictive substances and behaviors, require an age limit for participation. Technology has opened a back door and provided the citizens of the world with billions of customized slot machines. There is only one problem though. They forgot to check for age limit. Please stay tuned for the continuation of this segment.